Yeah, I would say, recognize that if you're feeling stuck, it might be because you're still thinking and taking action like you did in startup. And there's nothing wrong with what you did in startup. The way that you innovated, the way you experimented, the way you focused on product development, sales, marketing, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what that season requires. But if you have found your product, you found your services, your customers, and you're really trying to scale, not just grow revenue, but scale, then most likely you need to shift the way that you think and take action. And you need to focus on these other areas of the business now: finance, leadership, productivity, and people.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the Winner Circle podcast. I'm your host, Jay Adewole, and I'm excited to have you join us for an insightful conversation titled Business Intelligence 101, Unlocking Big Wins for Small Businesses. So today we are joined by Courtney De Ronde, CEO of Forge Financial and Management Consulting, and the creator of the Simple ScaleUp System, with over 20 years of experience as a CPA and 15 years in business leadership, specialized in guiding small businesses from startup to scale up with clarity and confidence. She's just not an expert in business intelligence. She's also a leadership and corporate finance, I don't want to say guru, I'll say superstar, helping founders make smarter, data-driven decisions that fuel sustainable growth and scalability. Our work empowers business owners to move beyond guesswork and use insight to achieve their most ambitious goals. So in today's conversation, we break down the fundamentals of business intelligence, and she would also share how small businesses can leverage data for big wins. Not only that, she will also review practical strategies to improve performance, profitability, and decision making. So I want you guys to join us as we explore how the right insight can unlock growth, sharpen leadership, and transform small businesses into scalable, resilient enterprises. So let's dive in. Good afternoon, Courtney.
Hi, Jay. Thanks so much for having me.
Always good to have you on the show. Really thank you for your time.
So in my career, I started out in public accounting in a small local CPA firm, and most of our clients were small businesses and nonprofit organizations. And what I found was the expertise and understanding that I had of accounting and finance from my college major and from the CPA exam really was something that was very technical and sometimes compliance driven. And our clients, who were small business owners or nonprofit leaders, didn't always understand how that translated into information that was helpful for them. And so the more I worked with those clients and started to build relationships and connections and understand their business or their organization, what they were trying to do, how they were trying to make decisions, I started to just intuitively bridge the gap for them by helping them see how they could make decisions based on information in their financials. If their financials were reliable, and if we set them up in a way that was relevant to give them visibility on what they needed, and if we started to look what I call through the windshield and not just the rearview mirror, that we gave them reports that looked ahead based on assumptions and past history, not just always capturing what had happened. And so I think for me, it was just, that was the client base that I served early in my career. And I wanted my work to be meaningful and to make a difference. And I found that the way that made the most sense with the clients we were serving was to help them understand how to translate that information into insights to support their decision making. Yeah, I think, one thing that stands out to me is that our firm, we did a lot of tax work. And so a lot of our small business clients would give us their information for us to prepare their tax return. And we would spend hours and hours and hours in our busiest time doing year-end accounting adjustments. And so part of that was for our own, realization of we're doing a lot of year-end accounting cleanup in our busiest season. But so that was part of it for us. Like, we need to get some of this compressed work out of this time frame. But for our clients, what that meant was that they would say to us in, March or April, "So how did I do?" They didn't have any visibility on their true financial performance throughout the year because their information wasn't up to date. It wasn't accurate. Maybe they had a bookkeeper paying bills and keeping transactions recorded, but they weren't properly accounting for things until the end of the year when we made all these adjustments in order to prepare the tax return. And so that really was a pivotal moment for me when I understood that we could better serve those clients all throughout the year. And it would also decompress our workload, but it would be valuable to them to have more information and insights throughout the year versus just getting it done in order to fulfill the compliance need of filing their taxes.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. So, looking at winners, have you got a business or brand that deserves to shine? I'm just saying this right now because I'm giving the opportunity for you to advertise on Winner Circle with Jay and connect with thousands of ambitious entrepreneurs and leaders who are about growth. It's all about growth. So, whether you are advertising a product or a service, secure your slot as low as $100. So, what are you waiting for? Email us at advert@winnercirclewithj.com. Here at Winner Circle with Jay, we just don't talk success, we create success. All right, see you soon. Your history, you've worked with businesses at different stages. When I mean different stages, I mean from startup to scale up. So for you, what patterns do you consistently see among those that succeed and those that don't?
Yeah. So we primarily work with established businesses. So they've made it past startup, but oftentimes what we find, Jay, is that they're still thinking and acting like they did in startup. So in startup, you're still trying to figure out who your customer is, what your product is, how do we price it. It's very heavy on sales, marketing, product development. It's usually heavy on experimentation, low on process and structure because we're figuring it out, right? And then once the things fall into place and you find your customer, you find your product, and you start to sell, then you need to shift into more structure and more systems, things that make you more scalable, things that allow you to generate more revenue without increasing your cost structure and your people at the same clip. That's how I would define scaling, is we're not just growing, but we're actually generating more margin without adding more people and more, because we've added more structure essentially. But oftentimes what happens is that we don't, as leaders and business owners, we don't recognize this shift has happened and we have to start focusing on different things because what we did to get us to this stage worked. And so we think we'll just keep doing it and we'll keep growing. But this is very cliche, but what got you here is not going to get you there is incredibly true in this journey from startup to scale up. But most people haven't recognized that there's two shifts that have to happen. One, in the owner's perspective, and then two, in the business itself, because most of them are still thinking and acting like they did in startup, both as a person and in the way that they're structuring their business. Absolutely. Yes. I think that business intelligence is really the information and insights that we feed across the business, whether it's finance, leadership, productivity, people. It's information and insights across all those areas that help us to support our decision making. And when we're in startup mode, we're often trusting our gut. We're using our instincts. And as we grow, we have to develop insights that will help give us better instincts along the way. But what often happens is that we keep relying on our gut, but our gut, our instincts, is based on our experiences and it's based on our emotions. And so our emotions are generally pretty fickle and our experiences are limited to what we've done before. So when you're trying to scale your business, you're trying to do something you haven't done before. So if you rely on your gut, to do something that you haven't ever done before, most likely you're going to fall short. There will be gaps and blind spots in your decision making because you don't have all of those experiences. So you need to add what we call business intelligence, insights and information, other people's perspective, other people's experiences, data and analysis to support your gut. And as you do that, your gut, your instincts will get better because you're feeding it more experiences to build it along the way. And so that's how we define business intelligence. And so sometimes people think it's something that's reserved for, Fortune 500 companies and people that have tons of resources, but it really doesn't have to be that complicated. It's just about adding information, insights, other people's experiences and perspectives into your decision-making process.
How early should founders
How early?
or business owners should start thinking about business intelligence? How early?
Yeah, I think really when you have made it, what I would say past startup, meaning I have found my product, I have found my customers, and we are now starting to grow that and we want to scale it. This is when you have to start feeding other sources of information into your business. And in what we believe 4 core areas, you need information and intelligence around your finances, how money flows through your business. It's not just about making more money, it's about keeping more of it. And
Of
sometimes
course.
that's where people can get sidetracked because they're focused on top line revenue growth. And they end up having all this additional activity, which creates complexity in their business. They're adding more people, they're doing more, but they're not making any more money. They're not keeping more of their money. They need better information and business intelligence. They need to understand how the money flows through the business. They need to have visibility on it. It needs to be accurate and reliable. So finance is one of those areas. Leadership is another. How do we organize people and resources within our business? How do we make sure that we're all aligned on who we are and where we're going, that we can have other leaders start to make decisions because we share the same values and we can trust that they're going to perpetuate our culture through their decision making? How do we set vision, strategy, organizational structure, clarity of roles, results, all those things around leadership? Productivity is about how we mobilize the plans that we make. How do we have people and machines and, fleets of vehicles, whatever, depending on what type of business you have? How do you have these resources that you've invested in that you actually utilize? You actually get a return on the investment and you're able to match up what capacity do we have here with the revenue that we're able to bring in, the sales that we're bringing in? How can we sell enough to utilize these people and resources? And where do we need to add more because there's a lot more demand? Or where do we need to, increase our profitability because we're utilizing them more? And then the last area is on people, or what we call human intelligence. And this one is really about understanding that everyone has unique gifts, strengths, and abilities. And when we're able to leverage them, they're more effective. So it's not just about having the right roles and having people who are aligned with our values. It's also having people who are naturally wired and have the gifts and strengths of what that role requires in this season of our business, because they're going to be way more effective at it and they'll be more fulfilled. And when people are more fulfilled, they're more engaged, they stay longer, which then cycles back through to our increased efficiency and profitability. And so those are really the 4 areas that we consider the areas of business intelligence that you need to focus on when you are in scale up mode. So it's not sales, marketing, product development heavily like it is in startup. It's finance, leadership, productivity, and human intelligence.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So let's quickly go through the simple scale-up system that you created.
Mm-hmm.
So what gap were you thinking, or what gap were you seeing in small businesses that led you to develop such program?
Yeah, so we were really seeing business owners and leaders who we served on the financial side of things with our virtual CFO, controller, tax advisory, and audit services. We were seeing them get more visibility on their finances through the work that we did, which supports their decision making. And then it would just point to some other area of the business that they needed to actually deal with. So the money The finances, they are not the story. They just tell the story of what's happening in the business. And the more you understand that story, the more you then realize, oh my goodness, if my profits are shrinking, is it because I have all these people and they're not utilized? And so I have a productivity problem? Is it because I have people who aren't wired to do the job and it's the wrong fit for them? There's all these different things that it could be. That's really management and leadership types of decisions, not just finance. And so we really saw this opportunity for us to help our existing clients more, not just reveal the story of the business through the finances, but also equip them with tools to then make decisions and gather insights and information to actually address what the finances were revealing. And so the Simple ScaleUp System is a structure. It's a set of principles, practices, and tools that equip leaders to essentially diagnose issues that they're facing in their business, design solutions around them, and then to drive results. And that's a cycle that just keeps repeating, and it covers all 4 of those areas. And we built it by essentially reverse engineering what we had done in our own business to grow our audit practice, our virtual CFO practice, to launch Forge out of that traditional CPA firm that I started at, that I mentioned earlier in my career. I'd eventually become the CEO of that firm, and we ended up splitting off to create Forge and left them with a pretty high volume traditional tax practice. But it was what had we done in order to grow and scale our business? What were the leadership and productivity and people and finance principles and tools that we had used? And we built them into a framework and a system that we could use with other leaders and founders and small business owners so that they could do the same. They wouldn't have to go to all the same things I had done or read all the same books I'd done or, experiment and fail with all the things I'd experimented and failed with. They could have that perspective and that insight and information that I gathered from my experiences to help support their growth and their journey as well.
What risks do you think businesses face, especially when their decisions are made without data?
Yeah, I think that the risk is that they're trusting their gut, and their gut is limited by their own past experience. I think that, you think about that. We have clients all the time that we're working with something comes up and they need to make a decision. Like, my profits are down, something's not working. What do I do? Well, the last time this happened, I, hit sales hard, went back out, generated a lot more clients and revenue, and that solved the profitability problem. So that's what I'm going to do again. But what might be true now is that you don't have a revenue problem. You have a utilization of resources problem. And you might generate a whole bunch more revenue and a whole bunch more customers, but not actually drive any more profitability. You actually drive a whole bunch more activity, a whole bunch more complexity, and you still don't make any more money because you base that decision to take action on some past experience without really diagnosing what's happening in the business. Maybe the problem is it's attrition. We're losing a bunch of clients because we're not serving them well. We're not delivering the value that our sales team promised them. So if my solution is to go sell a whole bunch more, and they do, and my service team doesn't change the way that they deliver to align with that value, I'm going to flush all those new clients right back out the system, and I will not have solved the problem. I will not have designed a solution that actually solves the problem because I never diagnosed what the problem truly was. So I think that's the risk, is that we end up making decisions based on what we think or feel, and without any supporting information or insights or diagnostic to go with it, which means maybe we'll luck out and it'll be okay. Or most likely we'll spend a lot of time, energy, resources, effort that we don't have. That's limited. As a business owner, as a leader, you are limited on all of those things: time, energy, dollars. You will use those precious resources that you have and not end up any better off. You will just end up more tired, more frustrated, with a string of things that you tried that didn't work, because it's a different game. When you are in scale up mode, when you have got past startup, it's a whole new level. And the things that worked before are not going to work again. it is a different game that you're playing, and you have to recognize that.
Some leaders are still stuck in the startup mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're already in that scale up level. So how can they tell if they're truly ready or they're already in the scale up level? Because
Yeah.
let you speak.
Yeah. So there's two transformations that have to happen. And I think the first one is in the founder or the owner. And it's this transition from being the founder or owner to being the leader. And within the Simple ScaleUp System, we have 10 principles. The first principle is you are the leader. These principles are mindset shifts that the owner has to make in order to shift from being just the owner, the founder, the CEO to actually being the leader of an organization that is scaling. So that first principle, you are the leader. Somebody is ready if they're willing to adopt that mindset. I am the leader. And with that brings responsibility to make decisions, to own mistakes, but it also brings freedom to make changes when something doesn't work. So when we're the leader, we have to take ownership of things that didn't work, but we also get to be the ones to say, but now we're going to try this instead. We have the autonomy and the responsibility to pivot and change and try different things. So I would say that's a really strong indicator if somebody is really ready to make this switch from thinking and acting like a startup to thinking and acting like a scale up. Are you ready to change your mindset from being the founder, maybe the salesperson, maybe the visionary, maybe, whatever you want to call it, the operator, to being the leader? Because scaling your organization requires structure and structure and people require leadership, not.
Hey, winners, as we continue our journey together today, I want to share something truly special with you. Over the years, I've had the privilege of coaching countless business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, guiding them to achieve breakthrough results and unlocking their full potential. So I'm opening up just 4 slots for my monthly business coaching program. That's right, 4 slots. After being fully booked for the past 3 years, if you're ready to elevate your business with personalized guidance, proven strategy, and a supportive community, I'm here to help you navigate challenges, refine your vision, and achieve your goals. So if you're committed to taking your business to the next level, I want to hear from you. Reach out to me directly at jay at winnercirclewithj.com and discuss how we can work together to build the future your business deserves. So don't wait, this is your moment. Join Winner Circle and let's embark on this transformative journey towards success together. And now let's dive back into today's episode.
Just ownership, not just ideas, not just sales. They require leadership.
They require leadership. Leadership is very important. So now let's look at the tools, because we need to, when we have the knowledge, we know the metrics to know that we've achieved from startup to scale up. So what are the tools?
Yeah. So we have dozens of tools across those 4 areas of intelligence. But somewhere that I believe it's very important to start with is your vision snapshot. So this is a tool that you're looking 3 years out into the future and you're saying, who are we becoming as a business and as a leader? So you're looking 3 years out, aspirational, who do we want to become? And it's divided into 6 different categories. For example, who do we want to be 3 years from now in terms of how we get clients? Maybe right now we get most of our clients from referrals from existing clients, but 3 years from now, we want to be generating new opportunities with clients from a digital marketing strategy or because of some authority we've built through publishing a book or whatever. We want to have partnerships that bring us bigger referrals, not just one-off referrals from clients. Whatever it is that you want to be true, how you get clients, what it is that you deliver, how you deliver it, who you are as a leader, what results you're getting, and what your team is like. Those are the 6 lanes that are in your vision snapshot. So it's really defining where are we going? And that vision snapshot, that one-page summary that tells us where we're going over the next 3 years. Once you have that, the reason it's so valuable and important is that it can serve as a magnet for resources and a filter for opportunities. The more successful you are, the more opportunities you have. And those opportunities can either distract you from getting where you said you wanted to go, from becoming who you said you wanted to be, or they can align and they can get you closer. But if you haven't defined where you want to go and who you want to be, those opportunities all look equally valid. And so that's how this serves as a filter. Does this get me closer to who I want to become, to who we're becoming as a business? And then in terms of a magnet, the more clear you are on who you want to become and where you're headed, and you can articulate that to your team, to your clients, to your other business connections, the more it will attract the resources that you need in order to get there. Once you know what you need and you start to share that with other people, they start to see, this would be an opportunity I should send your way. This is an idea. This is a book. This is something I can share with you because I now understand what you're trying to do. And the more clear you are about that, the more it attracts those resources. So I would say that's a very strong starting point. So we talked about the starting point for the leader, for the owner, that mindset, I am the leader. And then from a business perspective, it's where are we going? Who are we becoming? It's clarity of vision, because then that's going to drive what systems, processes, people do we need across these areas of the business in order to get there.
Looking at business intelligence right now, what trends should leaders be paying attention to for now?
I think that it's really understanding what type of information you need to support decisions. So if you started with, let's say you set your vision and then you set your strategy, how you're going to get there, and then you chose some goals, some outcomes for 2026 that would get you another year closer to your vision. The next step is to decide, what do we need to measure and monitor in order to track our progress towards those goals? And then building a dashboard that gets consistently updated. So we just did a whole workshop on this with our clients a couple weeks ago. There are some metrics, some forms of information that you need visibility on every week. And there's some things that you need visibility on once a month, or maybe even once a quarter. But that it should all be connected to where you're going and what you're focused on for this year. If you just go to somebody who builds dashboards and ask them to build you a dashboard, or you get an off-the-shelf software and just choose their default dashboard, you'll get lots of information, but it won't necessarily be relevant to the things that you need to focus on. So instead of diving into the tool, first think about what it is that you need to measure. What would give you an indicator of whether or not we're headed in the right direction? If it's something weekly, it's going to be something more related to ongoing regular activity. Like, for example, if you had a goal to increase the average revenue per customer, you want fewer customers, less volume, higher dollar customers. So you might want to be measuring on a weekly basis the average fee per prospective customer that's in your pipeline. Because if your sales team and your marketing team are generating leads and working leads that do not have a high fee per customer and they land them, then eventually you're going to get customers that have a low fee per customer, and it's going to show up in your financials later when they're already your customer and they're not the ones that you want. So there's a leading indicator that you can set up that would drive the behaviors and the activities happening now to say, this isn't working. We need to flex or pivot our plans to do something that would attract what we actually want. So part of it is deciding, what do we want? Vision, strategy, goals. And then the other part is getting visibility on the indicators that would tell you if you're getting closer to that or not.
It's a very interesting podcast today. And all this information that you shared, our listeners have been looking forward to it, especially when it comes to business intelligence. Very powerful. So now let's look at the closing reflections. What should it be?
Yeah, well, I would love for your listeners, Jay, to self-assess where they're at on this journey of business intelligence across these 4 areas so that they can start to see where they're at and where they should focus next. We have a free assessment that they can take that answer these questions themselves, and it'll give them a visibility on where they're at and some next steps that they could take. So if somebody's got one thing to do, I would say go and take this free assessment. It's at assessments.forgeahead.com. And you can start to assess where you're at in your business and in your leadership around finance, leadership, productivity, and human intelligence. And then it'll give you some very actionable things that you can do to start to build each of those areas based on where you're at right now.
All right. Thank you so much for that gift. For listeners, try to get the link and make sure the link should be added below. If they take the action or they take the recommendation, the question any business owner or leader would say is, how quickly can I expect to see results from the action?
Yeah, I mean, you can start to see results immediately if you implement what you learn. And so oftentimes we see business owners and leaders who acquire information and knowledge, and then they do not carve out time to implement what they learned. So let's say you take the assessment and it tells you where you're at in these 4 areas of intelligence, and each area of intelligence is going to give you 3 next steps you could take. If you take just one of them, which could be most likely, if you don't have a vision yet, then it's going to recommend that you get clear around where you're going, just like I described in that vision snapshot. If you actually do that, if you carve out a couple of hours to get clear on that, then it will start to be a filter for every decision that comes up, every opportunity that comes your way immediately. Somebody reaches out to you, hey, we'd love to create this joint venture with you to cross-refer work. And you say, does that get me closer to where I wanted to go and how I get clients? Or is that going to be a distraction that's going to take my time, energy, and resources that might give me some more revenue, but it doesn't actually get it in the way that I want it? If you implement what you learn, you will start to see results immediately.
Immediately. So for listeners, or let me say leaders or business owners or entrepreneurs who are listening to this podcast right now as we speak, feel stuck, or maybe they're uncertain, how can business intelligence help them regain confidence and momentum? What would your advice be to them?
Yeah, I think it could be an issue with your mindset, or it could be an issue with your business practices. So I would say think of it from that perspective. And that assessment, if you take it, that's going to help you get clarity on that. But if you don't, just think about, is this an issue with my transformation from startup to scale up, the way I think and take action as a leader? Is it about my mindset? Do I believe I am the leader? Do I understand I need to know who I am and where I'm going? Do I understand that I need other perspectives around me? There's all these 10 principles that we talk about in the Simple ScaleUp System. Is it about my thinking that's holding me back? Because if you don't change how you think, you're not going to change how you behave. So is your thinking holding you back? Or is your mindset right and ready for scale, but you need the systems and processes? You need to implement the tools within your business that will feed this cycle that I talked about of how do I diagnose what's happening? How do I intentionally design a solution? And how do I drive and monitor the results? It's one of those 2 things is holding you back, or maybe both. But if it's your mindset, you need to start there, because if you don't change how you think, you will not change how you act. So that's a little self-reflection that your listeners could go through if they're not ready to take the assessment yet.
So you need to ask yourself, listeners, is this your mindset? How ready to change you are? At the Winner Circle, we always believe in one thing, which is even if you have to fail forward, don't ever fail backward. It's very important. We go forward together. So what's your final advice for turning data into decisive action?
Yeah, I would say, recognize that if you're feeling stuck, it might be because you're still thinking and taking action like you did in startup. And there's nothing wrong with what you did in startup. The way that you innovated, the way you experimented, the way you focused on product development, sales, marketing, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what that season requires. But if you have found your product, you found your services, your customers, and you're really trying to scale, not just grow revenue, but scale, then most likely you need to shift the way that you think and take action, and you need to focus on these other areas of the business now: finance, leadership, productivity, and people. There is one more resource we can share with your audience too, Jay. We do have a free ebook that describes the Simple ScaleUp System. It lists all the tools, all the principles, all 10 principles. And so that's available as well for your listeners to download for free at forgeahead.com/ebook. So that could be another starting point if you don't want to start with the assessment and you just want to get more understanding of what are these principles, what are the mindset shifts. If you download that ebook, you'll see those 10 principles in there as well.
All right. Thank you so much for the gift. I guess we're getting a lot of gifts today, which is great. Go to the website and download the book, the ebook, and get all the knowledge you need from that. So thank you so much for listening to this show, guys. And I want to say a big thank you to our guest today, Courtney De Ronde, for joining us and sharing all the knowledge we need on Business Intelligence 101. That means unlocking big wins for small businesses. All the information, I learned a lot today, even as I have a lot of knowledge in how this thing works, but I still add a lot of information today. So I'm sure you got the same information. So even if you're watching this live, make sure you go back and watch the recorded version when it goes live on all platforms, all podcast platforms. You know how we do it. So, and also if today's conversation inspire you, I want you to understand that you need to subscribe, rate, and review the Winner Circle podcast on your favorite platform, depending on where you're listening on this podcast or on the listening to this podcast. So, because your support always helps us continue to bring inspiring leaders and practical strategies to listeners around the world, not just the United States. So, I also want you to connect with us on social media and share your favorite takeaways or questions from this episode. We love to hear how this conversation help you gain clarity, make smarter decisions, and build stronger businesses. So thank you for tuning in to the Winner Circle today. Remember, big wins start with clear data, informed decisions, and consistent actions. So until next time, I'm your host, Jay Adewole, and encouraging you to lead with insight, scale with confidence, and keep building your Winner Circle. Thank you, guys. All right.